Which freshmen are going to make the biggest impact on the Duke football team this season? And how confident are you in quarterback Riley Leonard going into his second season as the full-time starter for Duke football? Those are some of the questions that we will tackle in this Mailbag Monday edition of Locked On Blue Devils.
Hi, everybody. Dick Vitale. Hey, make sure you listen, man, to Locked On Blue Devils with J.J. Jackson. He's awesome, baby.
You are Locked On Blue Devils, your daily podcast on the Duke Blue Devils, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everybody, and welcome into another episode of the Locked On Blue Devils podcast. My name is JJ Jackson, and it's so great to have you here with us on this Monday, July 31st, 2023, the final day of July. And we've got a fun and exciting episode of the show for you today. It's a Mailbag Monday edition of the program as we get set for the start of fall camp with the Duke football team. We've got some Duke football mailbag questions that we want to answer with you, with my good buddy Josh Cox from Duke Football Talks Section 17 podcast. If you haven't done so already, please be sure to follow and subscribe to this podcast for free wherever you get your podcasts. Be sure to leave us a 5-star rating and written review. Your support means the absolute world to us when you do those things. Also, make sure that you watch the show daily on YouTube. Again, in August, aka tomorrow, we're back to putting out a show 5 days a week and really excited about getting back into the full swing of things. So a lot of good content coming your way. Hit that subscribe button on our YouTube channel. Share the video with your friend and so much more. Follow us on Twitter at LO_Blue Devils. And I'm on Twitter at _JJ_Jackson_. Without further ado, let me bring on my very good friend, Josh Cox from Duke Football Talks Section 17 podcast. Josh, I hope you're doing well, man, on the final day of July. Before you know it, football's right back.
Yeah, August is, gearing up as the month. And so, we're one day away from the month of August. Looking forward to football season kicking off. And so, it's warm here. I'm sure it's warm there. But, hey, that's summer in the South, right?
No kidding. Absolutely. So let's get right to it. It's Mailbag Monday. Your questions were sent to us on Twitter at LO_Blue Devils. Also had a couple of people sending us an email, lockedonbluedevils@gmail.com. And again, appreciate all the questions that were sent to us. So, Josh, let's just kind of tackle them right away. Here's question number one for us today. Which freshman do you think could have the biggest impact this year for Duke football? Freshmen, so names that we're not as familiar with, who's going to be making an impact?
I'm assuming they're referring to true freshmen. That's the way I'm taking it. So, interestingly enough, this Duke team returns, 17 starters on both sides of the football there. I think 9 offensive, 8 defensive, something like that. So there's a lot of starters returning. So there's going to be smaller windows for true freshmen. Last year, for instance, we knew Vincent Anthony and Chandler Rivers were both going to start and or provide a lot on last year's team. This year it's not so cut and dry. The wide receiver room, Apollos Cook's the only guy there that's a true freshman, and that room is stacked. Running back room, you got Peyton Jones, who showed out really well in spring ball, but let's face it, there's a 3-headed monster in that running back room that's probably going to be ahead of him. No one necessarily in the secondary stood out. So where I'm going with this, I believe the defensive line. I believe there's going to be a continued rotation. Defensive line, there's 2 guys, defensive tackle on the interior, Terry Simmons. I could see Terry Simmons. There are 4 guys in the middle with Wesley Williams, Aeneas Peebles, and then Jamion and Dwayne Carter. But I could see Terry Simmons working his way into that rotation. And then Desmond Aladuje is a defensive end. We have Anthony Nelson and Michael Reese and Vincent Anthony coming back, among others. RJ Oben, of course. But I could see those 2 guys working their way in to the rotation. I believe that's the best chance that we'll see a true freshman contribute this season.
Which I'm looking forward to. As you said, it's a good problem to have that you have so many starters returning, so you don't have as many just home run picks in regards to a freshman walking in and getting a job right away. But you got to rotate on the defensive line. So, I think that's kind of the room that you would have to go for is where are you going to see guys rotate a lot to give a lot of snaps to a freshman in order for them to make a big impact.
Well, and this is also part of the fallout or whatever the result of the COVID year. I mean, Jamion Franklin is back this season
Right.
on a COVID year. Anthony Nelson is back this season on a COVID year. And so if those guys don't get that extra year of eligibility, we're definitely talking about these guys. You've got Jalen Calhoun back on a COVID year. You've got, all these different guys. And so this is just kind of the natural flow and result of that extra COVID year, which, listen, I'm not complaining about, and Duke fans shouldn't complain about, that these guys that have been here 4 or 5 years want to come back for another season. But there's going to have to be some more realistic expectations with these young guys as they come in now because, those rooms are a little bit more crowded than they would have been without the COVID year.
All right, let's move on to our next one. It's a Mailbag Monday edition of the program. Again, send your questions. We'll answer them in future weeks, whether it be football or basketball, LockedOnBlueDevils@gmail.com. Moving forward here, let's talk quarterbacks. How confident are you in the quarterback room behind Riley Leonard? So a lot of expectations for Leonard going into his second season as a full-time starter. But I like this question, Josh. How confident are we in the guys behind him?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's actually a question that I asked both Coach Elko and Kevin Johns in the spring. And that, basically was the question is, what does the progression look like? How is Henry Beelan looking in spring ball? How is Grayson Loftus, a true freshman, looking in spring ball? And what we have heard from the coaches and what we observed as we were at spring ball is a much improved Henry Beelan. Henry seems like the game is slowing down for him. He's making reads better. He's got a cannon of an arm. He has a great arm. And so I believe Henry, I do believe if something, God forbid, but if something were to happen and Henry have to step in, or if even in the rotation, every now and then Coach Johns decides to give Henry, a series, I do believe you're going to see a little bit more of the run first, a tad with Henry. He's such a big guy. And he can, let's put it this way, after he gets hit, he'll probably still gain 2 to 3 yards after contact. And so I believe we'll see a little bit more of that. As far as Grayson Loftus is concerned, I had a slow start in spring a little bit, just the speed of ACC Power 5 football, trying to figure out the system under Kevin Johns, but it didn't take him long. It was 2 or 3 practices in. You started seeing Grayson Loftus really come into his own in the spring game.
Yeah.
You saw him connect with Apollos Cook on a beautiful pass. And so all that to say, to answer that question, I mean, God forbid anything happened to Riley Leonard, but we do know we were playing football, right? Like Duke plays football, things happen. I am more confident in that quarterback room this season than I was last season, for sure, because of Henry Beelan's progression. And then, listen, there's been true freshmen that have started at quarterback in the ACC before. It'll happen again.
Yeah.
If it gets down to that, I mean, Grayson Loftus is ready. That's why he came to Duke. He didn't come to sit. He came to play. And so I think, I guess at the end of the day, I'm a Kevin Johns guy. So I've got confidence. Whatever happens that comes out of that room, Kevin Johns' hands on it, I'm confident with it.
Yeah, the room's going to be making good decisions, that's for sure. And here's the best part. We've got Riley Leonard coming back as starter for another season, which a lot of people are excited about. Let's talk a little bit more about that, Josh.
And I want to say real quick, I was actually just looking on the roster this morning. There's a fourth quarterback. Obviously, he's going to be just probably a practice guy. His name's Donald Tomlin out of Columbia, South Carolina. Just noticed that on the website this morning, actually. So there's a fourth guy in the room, probably just a guy for practice and things like that. But there is a fourth quarterback.
All right, well, let's take our first break of today's show. We'll be back with more Locked On Blue Devils in just a moment. Locked On Blue Devils here today is brought to you by our friends over at LinkedIn. These days, every new hire can feel like such a big-time, high-stakes wager for your small business. That's why you want to be 100% certain that you have the best access to qualified candidates available. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the right people for your team faster and for free. Add your job and the purple hashtag hiring frame to your LinkedIn profile to spread the word that you're hiring. Simple tools like screening questions make it easy to focus on candidates with just the right skills and experience so you could quickly prioritize who you would like to interview and hire. It's why small businesses rank LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions will apply. Moving forward here on today's episode of Locked On Blue Devils, JJ Jackson alongside my pal Josh Cox from Duke Football Talks Section 17 podcast. Very quickly, I'm going to put an impromptu question here in our mailbag.
All right.
Something I teased in the open, Josh, but talking about the quarterbacks, just how confident are you in Riley Leonard as he gets set for his second season as a full-time starter with Duke?
Oh, man. Well, I mean, if the scale is 1 to 10, man, I'm a 10. I'm fully
I'm a
on the
10
Riley
too.
Leonard. Yeah, I'm fully on the Riley Leonard hype train. And here's why. I really feel like he's down to earth. I feel like that he said this at media days last week. He does literally let the game come to him. He reads the defense and he makes decisions based upon that. And he's a good, very good reactionary player. In my opinion, when you have the ability to run like he can run, you have the ability to throw like he can throw, and you're very good reactionary. I mean, you're gonna be successful, and so I'm on the train. I don't know what his numbers will look like this year. We know he's gonna face some stout defenses this season, but I've got all the confidence in the world with Riley Leonard. I'm glad he's the guy under center at Duke for sure.
I can't wait to see what this year looks like for him because he's put the bar pretty high with his performance that he had a year ago. And now how do you kind of build off of that if you're Riley Leonard going into this next season? That's something that we're going to be able to see. All right, let's move on to our next one. Looking at our questions here again, Mailbag Monday, LockedOnBlueDevils@gmail.com to email your questions, or LO_Blue Devils on Twitter to send them to us that way. Which game do you think the Blue Devils could pull an upset off in this year? If you're watching us on YouTube, of course, you can see that schedule scrolling across the bottom of the screen. And as we talked about last week, Josh, you were on the show right after ACC kickoff. And as you talked about last week, the schedule is much more difficult than it was a year ago. And yet Duke could still be a better football team this year than they were last year. So I really like this question. If you were to kind of look for an upset, where do you think Duke could make that happen?
Yeah, so the first thing is, which games will Duke be the decided underdog, right? That's where you have to start. And I believe there are some 50-50 games. For instance, UNC, maybe NC State, Pittsburgh, those types of games. When we're looking at like a three-point either way, line, I'm not going to call those upsets. So I'm going to remove those. Louisville, I'm going to remove those games. I believe there are 3 games this season where we will be the decided underdog. And so obviously that is week 1, the home game, Clemson, Labor Day at Wallace Wade. It's week 5, I believe, where we are at home, Notre Dame, coming to Wallace Wade. And then I believe it's week 8, 7 or 8 in Tallahassee, on the road, Florida State.
Florida State, yeah.
So I believe it's those 3 games. As we break down those 3 games, I believe the natural pick there, and I believe the correct pick there would be Notre Dame. Notre Dame's gone through some different offensive coordinator situations. They just lost their strength and conditioning coach this past week. He had just signed a contract extension, and then he got fired for something. So whatever that is. So there's a little bit of upheaval there. I'm not sure that Notre Dame had as good of a season last year under Marcus Freeman as they had hoped to have. If you put Notre Dame on the field with Florida State's decidedly better. If you put Notre Dame on the field against Clemson, Clemson's decidedly better. So for that reason, I believe Duke can and will, I guess I'll go ahead and say that, pull that upset in week 5 at home against Notre Dame.
I like the pick. I really do. I think Notre Dame, the home games are the ones that you feel, but anytime you're looking at college football, that's why you got to look at the home games. And so Notre Dame is certainly one there. And it kind of sets us up for another question that we got in the mailbag. So we'll kind of go there here next, Josh. And the question was, what is it going to take to compete with Clemson? Right out of the gates, Labor Day football game, Clemson, a team that a little disappointed with how they performed a year ago. Cade Klubnik is the guy. There's no more DJ drama in the quarterback room there for Dabo Swinney's team. What will it take for the Duke team to compete with the Tigers?
Well, number one, it's going to take a 110% effort on the Duke side, and that is from the top down. That's going to be in game plan. That's going to be in scheme work. That's going to be on both sides of the football. It's going to be in special teams. This is going to have to be a game if Duke is going to win this game or even be, there in the fourth quarter. It's going to have to be a game where we don't make any just dumb decisions, right? So, like, okay, for instance, if there's a tip ball or a bang play and there's an interception, okay, you can deal with that. It's a game play interception. If it's a who was he throwing it at? There was a Clemson guy right there. You can't have those.
Yeah.
You can't muff punts, right? You can't make a bad decision on a kickoff if you're going to win these types of games. You can't blow coverage, right? If they beat you one-on-one down the sideline, that is what it is. But you can't have busted coverage, right? You can't give them wide open lanes in the secondary. And so that's where it's got to be. Duke has to play. I'm not going to say a perfect game because there's no such thing. But Duke has got to play at 110%. And then you have to really hope and rely on the fact that while it's obvious that TCU was an incredibly gifted offensive team last year, but bringing in the offensive coordinator, Cade Klubnik, as good as he played towards the end of the season when they did bring him in and play him, at the end of the day, it's a brand new system for him. Let's call it, he is a first-year starter. It's the first game of the season. There's going to be a little bit of, we got to get used to this, our timing, this and that. And so you got to hope that they make some mistakes, that they put the ball on the field a little bit and we recover the fumbles. There's a tip ball that goes in our favor, that kind of thing. And so that's what it's going to take. It's going to take an absolute all-out effort on the Duke side from the top down, from Mike Elko and the coordinators down. And then you're going to have to hope that Clemson has a little bit of just a slow start out the gate. This is not the Chick-fil-A opening game where they're playing, Auburn or something crazy like that. And so who knows, maybe there's a little bit, and I know Dabo is pushing hard for it not to be this way, but maybe there's a little bit of like shrugging their shoulders. Okay, it's Duke opening game. We're usually playing Oregon or Ohio State or somebody like that. So that's all you can hope for. All you can hope for is Duke plays their best. Clemson stutters a little bit, trips a little bit out the gate, and we'll see what happens.
And we'll continue to talk about that game as Labor Day gets closer to us, that's for sure. So a final break, and then we've got a few more questions that we want to tackle here on today's episode of Locked On Blue Devils, and we will do that in just a moment. Locked On Blue Devils here today, brought to you by our good friends over at eBay Motors. For a championship team, it's all about making sure that every player is a perfect fit. It's the same when it comes to your vehicle. Every part needs to fit just right. So the next time you need parts and accessories, head to eBay Motors. With eBay's guaranteed fit, you can be sure that every part you need fits just right the first time around. Add your ride to My Garage and look for the green check to know the part will fit, or you get your money back. Because just like in sports, confidence is the name of the game when you shop on eBay Motors. And with over 122 million parts to choose from, you'll be back in the game in no time. After all, it's easy to bring home a win with the right parts that are guaranteed. Get the right parts, the right fit, and the right prices on ebaymotors.com. Let's ride. eBay guaranteed fit, only available to U.S. customers. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. Final few moments here on today's episode of Locked On Blue Devils. JJ Jackson alongside my pal Josh Cox from Duke Football Talks Section 17 podcast. What can we expect from the Section 17 podcast in the days and weeks to come?
Oh, yeah.
Tomorrow is August. Give us a little plug, man.
Yeah, you can expect more. All right. So whatever we've been doing in the last 3 years, you can expect more of it. We've just added a new member of our team. His name's Tyler. He's going to be doing a lot of more of our social media, like reels and content like that. We're going to try to bring you better game day video content. So what does a game day look like in Durham, tailgating and all that kind of stuff. So we're going to be doing a whole lot more of that. We are going to be announcing a brand new segment, or not even a segment, a brand new side of our podcast that we can't even say anything about yet. We're waiting. We have to wait and let you know what that is. But that's going to be huge. It's going to be a way for you as fans to be involved and get even more content from us that you will not get anywhere else. And so we're looking forward to that. And then, August the 13th, Sunday, at 2:00, it's fan day. So if you're local or within driving distance, you can come to a 2:00 practice on Sunday, August the 13th. Stay for the practice, and then afterwards you get to go on the field, interact with the players, meet the players, take pictures and stuff like that. And so we'll be there for that. And so come by and say hello.
I love that. That's awesome. All right, so let's keep moving. Talking about these questions that we've got for Mailbag Monday today on the program. Find them more. We talked about a 10 on the confidence scale for Riley Leonard a little bit earlier. This was a good question that we got on Twitter. Where do you rank Riley Leonard amongst QBs in the conference? There's Jordan Travis out there. There's Drake Maye. There's Cade Klubnik, who we talked about a little bit earlier. People want to know, where do you rank Riley Leonard amongst QBs in the conference?
Okay, so, once again, being very honest, credit where credit's due. Not going to be a homer here, even though, I just said in the previous segment, my confidence level is at a 10 with Riley Leonard. Give me Riley Leonard and I'm good. But I do think, being intellectually honest, Drake Maye is the number one quarterback in the conference.
No question.
You got to give him his due respect. If that guy was wearing dark blue, we'd be all over it. Calling for the Heisman Trophy. We'd be. So Drake Maye he's had two great seasons. Just an incredible player. Jordan Travis. I mean, there's that clip from last year's Florida game where he escapes the rush from like 5 different guys. I believe it's the Florida game. And he ends up rushing in for the touchdown. And it's incredible. It is incredible. So I think you got to go Jordan Travis at number 2. Florida State is going to be a preseason top 5 team. He's their quarterback. He makes them go. You got to say Jordan Travis. Now, here's where I think you really get into the discussion. Right now, it's really gone back and forth between Cade Klubnik at Clemson, Riley Leonard at Duke. And I'll just say this. Cade Klubnik may be a more talented quarterback than Riley Leonard. I do not know the answer to that question. All I know is last season we watched Riley Leonard be one of the best dual threat quarterbacks in the country, not just the ACC, in the country. In fact, was looking today, I believe it's Mike Farrell has rated Riley Leonard the number 13 overall quarterback, or I think 13 overall quarterback in the country heading into the season. And so because he's proved it last season, he started every game. He stayed injury-free. I'm going to go Riley Leonard as the 3rd rated quarterback. Now, certainly there are some other guys that could break out and have a great season. Brennan Armstrong, who is back reunited with his former offensive coordinator at NC State. Who knows? I don't know who's going to catch the football in Raleigh, but Brennan Armstrong is there. Mitch Griffiths at Wake Forest, he is going into that system that tends to make quarterbacks look really, really good. Who knows? There are many others. Jurkovic has made his rounds to another. I believe he's at Pitt now. So there's all these different possibilities. But I think Riley Leonard is securely the number 3 quarterback in the ACC.
Yeah, I mean, look, you talk about the kind of interconference movement of these quarterbacks. Sam Hartman leaves Wake Forest. Now he's going to be under center for the Fighting Irish. And you mentioned Jurkovic. All these guys on the move. I think top 3, top 5 is kind of where we're settled on where we're ranking Riley Leonard amongst quarterbacks in the ACC, which is a good problem to have. All right, let's nail out these last 2 questions before the end of today's show, Josh. So, speaking of the one, Mr. Drake Maye, do you like our chances of getting revenge on Maye and Carolina for what happened last year? Because if people do not remember, if they just deleted it from their memory, Boy, we that was a heartbreaker. The definition of heartbreak in college football when Drake May and UNC were able to pull out kind of a last-second win.
Yes, that was a heartbreaker. If you were in Wallace Wade, you could feel it, the heartbreak. To answer the question, I do believe that Duke can come back this year and get that revenge. I believe Duke is going to be a better football team than they were last year. I think that's just the facts, barring injury. Secondly, I know UNC is recruited well and all of those things, but they did lose quite a few players in that portal, and not just players, but contributors in the portal, in the secondary, and then you have guys that are left for the draft. You got Downs and Williams that are now gone, and so at the end of the day, Drake May is going to be throwing to some new guys. I know they got some transfers in, and they had recruited some guys. I'm not underestimating those guys one bit, but I can tell you this: Josh Downs is not going to be on the field this year. And that guy was an incredible talent. He will be a great NFL wide receiver, and will find his way there. And so I do believe Duke has a chance there. And I like historically. I mean, I think we go to Keenan and we play well at Keenan. And so, I'm not throwing. I guess I am throwing rocks here, but Keenan's not necessarily a home field advantage. Just to be honest with you. And so it's not a long drive. Duke gets over there and plays well. I think of the two-hand pass that turned into a pick six, and others in the recent history where Duke has done really well there. And so I like our chances.
All right. And then final question here, as we look at the 2023 college football season, next year, a lot of change is coming in the sport. Texas and Oklahoma make their way over to the Southeastern Conference. We're seeing Colorado now moving to the Big 12. We've got USC and UCLA making a big move over to the Big 10. So with that being said, the ACC has already kind of switched up the schedule a little bit, but like the rest of the sport, going to kind of walk away from this division format. You no longer have to remember if teams are in the Atlantic or Coastal Division following the season. Will you miss having divisions after this year, Josh?
Well, number one, it's a complex answer. Okay, so number one, I love the new schedule format. The 3-5-5. I love that. I love you play your three teams every year.
Permanent opponents.
You rotate the 5 and 5. I love that. I think that is wonderful. As a Duke person, what this has done, this sets up the fact that historically, let's say, and I'm not talking about the last 3 years, I'm talking about the last 20 years. Historically, the top two teams in the ACC have been Florida State and Clemson, right? And then kind of below them in that tier, you've got your NC States and your Pittsburghs and whatnot. And every now and then you'll have a team like Wake bump up there. But that Atlantic division was a little more stacked than the Coastal, let's be honest. Miami was not up to par, has not been up to par. You know what I mean? Like Virginia Tech has not played up to par, and that was what the ACC wanted. So as far as the chances of Duke getting to Charlotte to play for the ACC championship, it's going to be more difficult now that there are no divisions. I believe Duke would have a much easier path to win the Coastal one year than they are going to be to finish in the top two of the ACC. So that's my complex answer. I like it, but it makes the road a little bit more difficult for a team like Duke, in my opinion.
So you'll miss it. You'll miss kind of the division format.
I will, but I'm not going to lie. I'm not going to miss, playing Pitt, Virginia Tech every season. I'm not going to miss that. Not going to miss that. Love the NC State. The NC State edition is going to be awesome.
And there will be other teams that you just get to see more frequently. Like I think this is necessary. Like players should not go so long without playing every other school in the ACC there in football.
That's right.
So big fan of that. Well, Josh, this was a whole lot of fun. A busy Mailbag Monday here on the program as we get set for the start of fall camp. One more time, kind of give us a plug for Duke Football Talk and where we can find all the work.
Yeah, for sure. You can find us online at DukeFootballTalk.com. You can find us at all social channels at Duke FB Talk. And if you're looking for our podcast, wherever you consume podcasts, you can look for Duke Football Talk or Section 17 podcast. It'll pop up right there. As JJ mentioned, and as you ought to do right now for Locked On, whether you're on YouTube, make sure you subscribe, like, Anywhere you consume podcasts, rate and review both Locked On and Section 17 would greatly appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thanks for that, Josh. We'll see you again soon, okay?
All right, man. We'll talk to you later.
All right. That's my pal Josh Cox from Duke Football Talks Section 17 podcast joining us here on the show today. And that's going to do it for our program today. Coming your way tomorrow, we'll have more basketball conversations for you. John Shire starting the month of August. He's got a coaching staff in place. What does that mean and more? We discussed that on Locked On Blue Devils. That's going to do it for today's show. As always, go Duke. I'll talk to you tomorrow. My name is JJ Jackson. Thank you and good day.